Well, Sallie Spillman worked at the bank in Alfalfa County, Oklahoma, and that's where they met. It didn't happen right away, but soon Jean Spillman approached Sallie and said, "I want to get married, and you're the one I want to marry." So thankfully she said yes. That started her life as a pastor's wife, mother of two, and an adventure in faith. So Sallie, this is your life. Sallie, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. I was born there and did all, grade school, high school, all of my education was there. My family, I had my parents and one brother who was 5 years younger than I am. And at that time, my mother's brothers were in North Little Rock, and so we had a lot of get-togethers with cousins and aunts and uncles.
Okay.
And otherwise, it was a pretty standard upbringing.
Great, all right. So when you were a senior in high school, the governor in Arkansas closed your high school. That was in 1959.
That's correct.
Why was that, and where did you have to go to school?
Well, it seems that was about the time when there were plans to integrate the schools, and there were people that did not want to do that. And so I think Governor Faubus said that the best thing he could do would just be to close the schools and then it would pass. And of course, as a senior, we kind of thought, oh good, we have some time off here. But the weeks went on, and they did try some television kind of classes, I suppose, somewhat like the virtual classes now. However, they were not very good. And so about probably at 5 to 6 weeks, most of us started looking for somewhere to go to school. A lot of the people in my class had to go even out of state to go to school, but I was able to go to a small suburb of Little Rock, Mapleville, Arkansas, and so I graduated from Mapleville High School. However, it's my understanding that they kept all of our records. I was at Hall High School. It took me 3 high schools to get through, because I started out at Central High School, which was the one that was really the big immigration problem. And then there was a new school, Hall High, and then Mapleville. So after 3 high schools, I was able to finally graduate.
That was a great day, I'm sure. So what about your college days?
Well, I spent a lot of time looking for a college where you didn't have to take any ACT or college boards or anything, and I found one. It was Gulf Park Junior College in Gulfport, Mississippi. It was an all-girls school, and because I discovered that if you had 1 year of college, you could transfer anywhere. You didn't have to take the test. And as you can tell, I do not like to take tests. So then I transferred. While I was at Gulf Park, I met a few people from Oklahoma, and I think there were 3 of us that transferred, and 2 of us ended up at OSU, and I'm not sure where the other lady went, the other girl went. And although until about the time we got married, we were kept in touch and were friends, but after that we kind of went our own ways.
Okay, so what was your degree from OSU?
I have a BS in home economics education.
Great. After university, you did marry.
Yes.
You moved to Florida.
Yes.
Talk about that time.
Well, I moved to Florida, and there was actually 2 couples of us that moved down there. And while we were in Florida, I taught at an institution for retarded children, was the term they used at that time. And we had our daughter, Tracy, and it was, there were good years there. Although during that time the marriage kind of dissolved, but it was really good years.
Okay. Well, you did work at Sunland Training Center. Is that where that was for the handicapped?
Yes.
Okay.
And I started out just in a regular classroom where we worked, on colors and numbers and that kind of stuff. Because my degree was in home ec, and they did have a home economics department, that lady retired, so I moved into that position and then enrolled at the University of South Florida and was certified in special education.
You moved back to Oklahoma in 1973. Talk about that time.
Well, I moved back and decided the friends that had moved to Florida when we did were from Cherokee. And so I thought, well, I'll just go there. I didn't much, my family, of course, was still in Little Rock, but I didn't think I wanted to be a single mom in a big town. So, although I have to confess, I did not realize what living in a small town was really like. But anyway, I was fortunate enough. I was first got a job with the Methodist Church in Cherokee, and then the president of Alfalfa County Bank was a member there and hired me as a cashier, and that started my career. I loved my career in banking. I finally ended up as vice president and cashier.
So you always did like working.
Oh yeah.
And you met Jean in Cherokee.
Yes, I did.
Do you recall all the many places that you and Jean have served as a pastoral couple?
I do. Of course, we started out in Cherokee, and I guess he had been there several, 2 or 3 years, not a long time. But we were there probably another 5 or 6 years. Probably one of the most important things while we were still in Cherokee was our son was born. So that was a blessing. And so we moved to Cushing the same year that our daughter started at OSU. And while we were there, she met the kid that would become her husband. And Stephen made it through, I think, about 5th grade in Cushing. And I worked at Bank of Cushing with John Bryant. And then from there we moved on to Elk City. And then...
But you did have, in Elk City,
Yes.
you taught at Burns Flat Training Center.
The Western Technology Center, yes. And I actually wasn't so much a teacher as I did the testing for certified nurse aides and certified medication aides and EMTs. And the interesting part there was once Oklahoma, I guess, approved tattoos, I did the test that I did for the man that was a tattoo artist was the first test that was done in the state after it was approved. So that was kind of interesting, and I was glad he passed.
Oh, okay.
But he did not offer to give me a
Yes. Oh, he didn't.
No, he did not.
But I think you said you probably would have declined that offer.
I think I would.
Jean retired. You moved to Enid. Was it a
We
retirement?
also served the church in Woodward before
Okay.
he retired.
All right.
And he retired, I think we were there 4 or 5 years, and then he retired in 2012.
Well, then talk to us about your involvement in church and community.
Well, of course, we have a lot of involvement. Gene did, I think it was 4 interims before he totally retired, and we stayed in Enid for a while. And so we served churches in Midwest City at Midwest Boulevard, at Lawton at First Christian Church, and Hennessy First Christian Church, and Fairview at Central Christian Church. And it was about that time that I said, hey, I'm tired of moving around. I'd like to be one place. And so we ended up, we had our house in Enid the whole time. So we just moved back home and stayed there. And we've continued, both of us have continued our connection with the church. Jean and I both serve on the regional board. I'm the chairman of the Disciples Retirement Community of Oklahoma, which it was a committee that was set up, and you may know that at the time, the Disciples Church had I think it was Oklahoma Christian Home in Edmond,
Yes.
and they went into bankruptcy. And a part of that was kind of like what Epworth does. You know, once they moved there, if they were a disciple, we said, hey, we'll take care of any financial needs that you may have. And we now have 3 remaining clients there that we still monitor them and stay in contact with them and watch to be sure that they have everything that they need. And as their lives begin to close out, we're in the process of working on an endowment that will benefit Christian Church Disciples of Christ seniors.
All right. Well, are there Disciples of Christ retirement centers in other places?
Yes.
All right. You also are a member of PEO
Yes.
and Eastern Star.
Yes.
Talk about your involvement with Eastern Star.
Okay. Gene and I are both in the grand family, which is like being the state officers of an organization. And so this past year, while we've traveled all over the state, it's been somewhat limited because of COVID, but we've still managed to get to several places. And that's about to come to an end because in October, someone else will have our jobs.
But you won't be uninvolved.
No.
so to speak,
No,
as I
no.
understand.
No, there's some, because we have relatively high positions in the organization, we're kind of expected to show up at different things. And then locally, Jean and I are members of Hennessy and then Sallie Chapter, which is here in Oklahoma City.
Well, you didn't tell, how did you initially get involved in Eastern Star? It wasn't just kind of a spur of the moment.
No, my mother was Eastern Star, and she kept after me enough that while we were still in Cherokee, I finally said, okay, I will join. But I was not active until we got to the church in Hennessy. And there was a lady at that church that was a friend of my mother's, and I told Jean then, I said, well, we've managed to avoid this for a long time, but I said, you know that we will be active in Eastern Star now.
Persuasive.
Yes.
You and your brother Tom were very close. In fact, he was always a significant part of your life. Both you and Jean have said that and sung such high praises of your brother. Tell us a little bit why he's so special.
Well, he is my little brother. He's 5 years younger, and passed away in like 2018. But he's very caring, and even it was interesting. People that contacted us after his death commented about how much of a peacemaker that he was. And he was just a caring soul. He, when we were little, both in elementary school, there'd be the Christmas party or whatever party at school. He always brought part of his edible part back home so that I'd be sure and have some, although I was having my own party, and I have to say I did not share with him. So, but anyway, and then the tornado that hit Woodward, not the big one in the 40s, but just not too long ago. You know, he called and said, you know, are you in your safe room now? And he just was constantly calling to be sure that we were safe. And
Well, you couldn't have picked a better brother, I guess.
could not.
So you and Jean traveled.
Yes.
When? Where? What are your favorite places?
Well, we've traveled quite a bit, and I think, as I've said, you know, we seem to really like Branson because we go there a lot, but I think that's partly because it's a quick trip if we want to just get away for a few days and we can get back. But I probably have two of our main trips that we've enjoyed. We did the Panama Canal, and as we went out, when we got to the middle, I think it's Lake Gatun, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Anyway, there was a kayak excursion, and so we thought, well, we'll take that. And as we were in the bus going to where the kayaks were, the leader said, now you know that the crocodiles will be out. And I was like, I looked at Jean and said, they did not mention crocodiles anywhere in the information, but we survived that trip, did not see any crocodiles. We did see some later from the ship, but not at that time.
Not on the kayak.
Yeah, I have
So
one more little
did you
story.
enjoy it, or were you
I did
anxious?
enjoy it. No, it was
Good.
I think, kind of a joke. But we also did another one that was a trip. It was a 2-mile hike into the volcano. And we'd been walking, no big deal. Unfortunately, they didn't tell us that the walk was straight up the mountain. And so I was like, bring me a horse. I'm not walking up there. So that was...
So you did not walk up, or you did?
I did not. I rode the horse. And
Oh, there was a horse
horseback.
to ride. All right then. All right. Didn't you go to Israel?
We did. And that was, of course, I think a trip of a lifetime. Many beautiful places, some of them very serene. And probably the most interesting thing about that was that our luggage did not make it. And so I got to do a little shopping. Fortunately, we were with friends that said, oh, here, I brought extra slacks or extra this, so we were okay. I did a little shopping in Jerusalem, going through just like you're going through the TSA stuff, they check everything out. And my suitcase arrived on the day we were coming back, and Jean got his suitcase, I think it was a week or so after we were home. But
Was the trip to Israel what you anticipated, or was it?
No, it was. It was just, especially in different places, there was just a sense of peace. I was amazed that Bethlehem is under Arab control, and so we had 2 guides. One was Arab and one was Jewish, and the one that was Jewish couldn't go in that part. He had to get off the bus and stay. So we stayed with just the driver then. So that was kind of interesting.
Do you have any trips that you are wanting to take?
Yes, We've got a couple. One will be a trip with some Eastern Star friends, and then Jean's always wanted to go to Hawaii, and so that's probably going to be our next one.
I think you should do that.
Yes.
You have become an embroidery artist. So how long have you had this hobby?
I was trying to think. I think we were in Hennessy, and so probably about 5 or 6 years maybe. And I'm not as good with it as I could be, but I'm hoping to find time here to do a little more exploring with it. But I have done, I did t-shirt quilts, which is not so much the embroidery machine, but I've done t-shirt quilts for each of my grandsons as they graduated from high school. For our own son, I made him 2. He spent his early years going to space camp, and so he has one quilt that's all of his space t-shirts. And then his second one starts out from when he was like 5 years old to his graduation from TCU.
So what brought you and Jean to Epworthville?
Well, it was kind of my brother passed away, and he was really the only close family that we had in that area. And we got to thinking, we saw some friends that were starting to decline in health. And I told Jean, I said, someday somebody's going to call our kids and say, you need to get to Enid and look after your mom and dad. And I said, that's not really fair to them, because the only way to get to Enid is either by car. Well, that's the only way, unless somebody takes you. And so we started thinking about what we ought to do. We kind of thought about maybe our son is in Austin, our daughter is in Cushing, and Austin was pretty nice weather. That was a kind of a good calling card, but that was far away from what we wanted to be. And so we decided that Oklahoma City and Epworth was probably a good bet for us, because Cushing, Tracy's here periodically from Cushing, and Stephen can fly in and rent a car and just be here. He doesn't have to drive another 2 hours to get to Enid, so it's kind of central.
Many of us are very happy that you moved here, because you and Jean are both very, very active. I have noticed that you and Jean do not spend much time sitting in a rocking chair recalling the good old days, but you continue building on your legacy.
Yes.
So do you have any final comments, Sallie?
No, but I can say this. We've always felt welcome here, and it's just, I can't tell people how nice it is. Almost immediately we were invited for this or for that, and so just a lovely place to be.
Sallie is a very caring and compassionate person. She's also a servant of God. When you go to have a conversation with Sallie, she exudes a warmth that is just so very welcoming. Sallie, this has been a review of your wonderful life, and we thank you so much for sharing it.